It's midnight. You're lying in bed, mentally cycling through tomorrow's grocery list, school forms, medication schedules, the issue one of your children is battling with, and what time you need to leave to make it to the pickup on time. No one asked you to do it. No one reminded you, but your mind is already sorting it all because that's what it's trained to do. This is the mental load of parenting, and it doesn't start with the to-do list. It starts with how your brain is wired to scan, prepare, and protect before anything even happens. Studies show that the average parent makes over 70 micro decisions before 9 a.m. That includes every lunch packed, every temperature checked, every item remembered, so someone else doesn't feel like the discomfort of something missing. And when you're the one holding it all emotionally and cognitively, the sorting becomes frantic, which means your brain waves become frantic, and you begin to carry an invisible strain your body can't always name. In today's episode, we're going to unpack what the invisible weight is doing to your nervous system, why the stable one often becomes the most neurologically burdened, and how to protect your mind without giving up your care. You deserve a brain that doesn't expect pressure to be its default setting. Let's talk about how to get there. Before we get started, if you're the one who keeps it all running, meals, calendars, mood management, silent emotional cleanup, this episode isn't a luxury. It's maintenance. If you're finding this helpful, I go much deeper in my new book, Help in a Hurry. It's the guide I wish I had when the mental load felt like the price of love. It doesn't have to be. It's not selfish to protect your peace. It's smart. It's skillful, and your brain will thank you for learning how. Now let's continue with today's episode. You get through the day just barely. Not because you're disorganized, but because your brain is carrying things no one else actually sees. There's the obvious, the solving of emotional issues, the diapers, the pickups, the medicine, the meals. But then there's the silent list. Remembering the snack your child cried about last week. Anticipating which tone will prevent a meltdown. Managing your own stress so your partner doesn't spiral. Keeping track of who hasn't had water, rest, or enough affection. Trying to help one child through bad choices while protecting your other children from the consequences of these choices. This is the mental load. And if you're the one who carries it, you know. It's not the tasks that break you. It's the constant background frantic thinking that just never stops. You're not overwhelmed by parenting. You're carrying the weight of 6 people's regulation systems inside your own. You feel it when you sit down to rest, but can't enjoy it. You feel it when someone says, "Why are you tired? You were home all day." They see it in your eyes. You feel it when the silence in the house is finally yours, but your mind still won't turn off. This is the part of parenting that doesn't get named, the invisible cognitive labor that rewires your sense of self. Over time, this pressure gets coded as normal. Your baseline becomes busy. Your nervous system adapts to constant monitoring, and you stop realizing how much effort you're actually expending just keeping the day on track. And people say you're the strong one, the stable one, but stability isn't a personality trait. It's a cost, paid in sleeplessness, decision fatigue, emotional contraction. And the longer you go without naming it, the more your identity fuses with your functionality. You become the one who can always handle it. You become the person no one checks on. You become the reason the system keeps moving. It's not that you're ungrateful, it's that your brain hasn't had a break in years. If this feels familiar, you're operating inside a role that just has no off switch. This is where burnout hides. Inside people who appear high-functioning but are neurologically fraying. It looks like numbness, short fuses, brain fog, the need to scroll just to feel like something is yours. Your exhaustion is not imaginary, and it's not a personal failure. It's what happens when one mind carries the mental architecture of an entire home. In the next chapter, we'll break down what this kind of load does to your brain, how your executive function, memory, and regulation systems adapt to chronic invisible labor, and what it takes to reclaim space without guilt. When you carry the mental load of parenting, your brain doesn't just work harder, you actually reorganize how it operates. You aren't imagining the fog, the irritability, the short fuse that shows up when there's one more question, one more spill, one more forgotten sock, one more breakdown. These are signals. They tell you that your mind has been leading your brain through a cognitive and emotional terrain that's more complex than it seems. Let's break it down. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain activated by your mind in decision making, impulse control, and emotional regulation, is one of the first regions to show wear under sustained mental load. When you're parenting, this area is on near constant duty, coordinating logistics and regulating your tone and editing your reactions and anticipating needs. Even low-level decisions compound quickly. Which cup will avoid an argument? Which route will get everyone there on time? Which response won't escalate the mood? How do you broker peace? Each micro choice draws cognitive energy from the same system that's also trying to manage patience, memory, and attention. Our lives are rooted in biology, but our mind drives this biology, which is why we feel the effects of each cumulative micro choice. Then there is the hippocampus, which works hard as you process short into long-term memories. When you're holding dozens of moving parts across multiple people's lives, your hippocampus can become overloaded. You might forget basic tasks because your memory system is oversaturated. You remember the school project due in 2 weeks, but you forget your own doctor's appointment. You recall your child's preferred bedtime song, but you can't find your keys. This isn't disorganization. It's evidence that your hippocampus has been adapted to prioritize other people's needs before your own. The amygdala, the part of your brain that responds to threat, also shifts under chronic mental load. When you're the one who holds it all, any disruption to the plan can feel like danger. A forgotten lunch, a last-minute meeting, a tantrum at bedtime. Over time, your amygdala becomes sensitized. Small disruptions trigger big internal responses, even if you don't show it outwardly. Your psychoneurobiology starts treating daily parenting as a high-stakes environment. And this creates what I call neural overactivation, a state where your brain fires faster, anticipates more, and rests less. Even when the house is quiet, when the list is done, when no one's asking for anything, your brain doesn't register the absence of demand as rest. It waits for the next thing. It's been primed to be frantic by the frantic mind. The non-conscious mind, where your identity lives, has dug up all the thought patterns where you learned to associate being needed with being valuable. And it's prompting you through signals such as how your emotions are changing and what this feels like in your body to reconceptualize these instead of being driven by them. And when you ignore the signals, and that pattern runs for years without interruption, vigilance is wired into your brain as normal. This is why mental load doesn't just feel exhausting, it becomes like a default operating mode. You might notice that you become hyper aware of everything left undone, emotional shutdown at minor interruptions, or chronic scanning for what needs fixing next. You may have trouble sleeping even when you're tired. Maybe you have difficulty just enjoying presence because your mind is predicting the next task. These aren't personality traits, they're neurological adaptations to sustained, invisible labor. But the most important part, these adaptations are not permanent because your mind is in the driver's seat. Your brain is plastic. It wires according to what it's directed to expect. And when your mind begins to shift what it anticipates, when you choose a new rhythm, when you update your emotional assignments, your brain follows. That's what the neurocycle helps you to practice. It's a way to reintroduce margin into a mind that's been coded for constant duty. In the next chapter, we'll talk through the internal loops that keep you stuck in these roles, the beliefs and patterns that reinforce mental load even when you want to share it. You've likely been told you're just good at juggling everything, that you're the organized one, the stable one, the one who can handle it. But here's what's often left unsaid. Stability is often a performance rehearsed under pressure. And when that performance becomes identity, the mind fuses worth with utility. That fusion creates stuck points, high energy patterns that keep your brain looping through the same invisible labor, even when part of you is desperate for relief. Let's name some of the most common ones. Here's the first one. If I don't do it, it won't get done. This belief is stored in the non-conscious mind, not as logic, but as lived evidence. You've watched the things fall apart before. You've seen what happens when a detail is missed or a need goes unmet. What often goes unrecognized is that parallel to this toxic pattern, a truthful one emerges from reasoning and intuition. These solutions are easily overlooked, however, when the conscious mind is overwhelmed by frantic, ultimately illogical thinking. So your brain starts preloading responsibility. Even when someone else offers to help, your internal dialogue answers, but will they remember the important part? Until that belief is updated, the brain continues wiring for hyper-responsibility. Second thing, it's easier if I just do it myself. Recognize that one? This loop gets reinforced every time you delegate and it doesn't go well. When effort is met with resistance, delay, or half-finished work, the unconscious system records this. Asking for help creates more work. So the conscious mind streamlines the process. Just do it all. It's easier. It entrenches this as a habit in the unconscious, ignoring the parallel truth. But this perceived efficiency is draining your executive resources. Your conscious mind and brain together are spending cognitive energy on thoughts that drain energy and therefore tasks that could be redistributed if your mind was trained to tolerate imperfect help. The problem isn't capability, it's the identity the mind has constructed around being the smoother of friction. Third one, I don't want to be a burden. This one runs deep, especially if you grew up around caretakers who were emotionally maxed out. You learned to read the room, to preempt a need, to avoid adding weight. Now, even in a different season of life, your mind may associate asking for support with emotional risk. The toxic patterns in your conscious mind have incorrectly created tags as vulnerability and as cost. So your mind shuts down the brain and the ask disappears before it even becomes a sentence. And that reinforces the loop. Do it alone, stay safe. But staying safe in this way also keeps you stuck. Fourth one, they just don't see it. You look around and wonder how no one else notices the mess, the noise, the tension. You think, why is this only obvious to me? And that isolation deepens that loop. You're drawn to these toxic patterns in the non-conscious mind and ignore the parallel solutions in the non-conscious mind. The result, you start creating emotional distance. This has impact. You now feel unseen, taken for granted. The brain is overtaxed with too much frantic high-energy brainwaves, and you find yourself responding by withdrawing or overcompensating. Neither path rewires the pattern. You can't make people see what they've never had to track. But your mind can reassign how much of that seeing has to come from you. Mental load isn't just about tasks. It's about the emotional meaning assigned to who's watching, who's helping, and who's silent. Fifth one, if I rest, I'll fall behind. This belief is the most exhausting of them all. It tells your brain that rest is not neutral, it's danger. The conscious mind directing this belief equates movement and action and fixing with security. So stillness triggers anxiety, not because you're addicted to busyness, but because your thought trees have never been pruned around rest. Even leisure becomes a task. Even joy carries a tension. Until you listen to the parallel truths within you, you will battle to actively reassign the meaning of rest, and your brain will continue responding to it with alertness and not release. These stuck points aren't character flaws. Please listen to me. They're not character flaws. They are the residue of toxic belief systems that have shaped your emotional rhythm over time. But your mind has authority. It can observe these patterns. It can direct your attention away from old scripts. And through daily practice, like the neurocycle, it can begin to rewire your psychoneurobiology towards a new baseline, because you no longer need to be the only one carrying it. In the next chapter, we'll walk through how to shift that internal script, how to teach your brain that safety doesn't come from holding it all. It comes from honoring the mind's choice to release. The mind leads, the brain follows. When the mental load has been running silently in the background for years, your brain wires itself to expect pressure, to monitor, anticipate, and absorb, even when the world around you is quiet. The mind was never built to carry that alone. Here's the shift. Being the stable one doesn't mean carrying it all. It means building a rhythm that protects your mind as well. Most people think of stability as a fixed trait, but neuroscience shows that what we call stability is often the brain's response to a repeated mental pattern, reinforced over time through habit, identity, and expectation. The mind, through conscious choices and unconscious reasoning and intuition, trains the brain to associate control with safety. That's why it feels hard to rest, why interruptions register as threat, why doing less feels disorienting. But this is a learned pattern, not a personal code, and it can be rewritten. You can learn to redirect neuroplasticity in the right direction. And this reframe begins with how your mind assigns meaning to effort. Instead of, I'm the one who has to keep it all together, you begin to ask, what would it feel like to trust the system to hold me too? Because parenting isn't just about care tasks, it's about energy exchange. When one person becomes the default regulator of emotions, decisions, and daily functions, the mind records this role as identity. The brain follows suit. But you are not the role. You are the one observing it. That's where the mind becomes your advantage. It can step back and assign a new framework, one where delegation doesn't equal failure, where structure includes margin, and where silence isn't used to plan the next task. Stability is not the absence of need, it is the presence of structure that includes your well-being. This is how you reconceptualize. You don't erase the role, you update how your conscious mind relates to it. You listen to your intuition and you recreate a new thought tree, not rooted in fear or identity, but in clarity. That's what the neurocycle makes possible. It doesn't remove the demand, but it transforms how your internal system engages with it. What's the result? Your brain learns to register offloading as secure, not risky. Your identity expands beyond being the one who always holds it. Your energy becomes available for connection, not just task completion. This isn't about fixing the world around you, it's about guiding the world within you. When your mind shifts from survival to coherence, your brain follows. And over time, you stop reacting from exhaustion and start leading from clarity. In the next chapter, I'll give you a concrete micro tool to begin this process, one you can use even in the middle of a full day, a long week, or a moment where the weight feels invisible again. You don't need an hour, you need a pattern interrupt. This micro tool is a mind-led, brain-directed process designed to slow the internal overactivation that builds when the mental load has no off-ramp. It helps reroute attention away from constant output towards sustainable clarity. You'll use it during transitions, those small in-between moments when your brain feels like it's about to spiral. After a meeting, before a pickup, during dishes, right before bed, let's walk through it. Number one, first thing, externalize the load. Pause without overthinking. Speak aloud or write down 3 things your mind has trained your brain to hold right now. For example, dinner, email, guilt about missing bedtime. This is not about solving anything. This is about signaling to your brain that the conscious mind is present and paying attention to the non-conscious mind's solutions. Once the conscious mind becomes the observer, it stops the brain from looping. Neurobiologically, this activates learning brainwaves in the prefrontal cortex, quieting reactive thought trees. I love this so much. The second one, identify what's actually yours. Ask yourself, of the things I just named, which are mine to carry right now? Not forever, not perfectly, just right now. This activates a mental type of filtering, a form of neuroplasticity where your brain begins to prune thought trees that are rooted in obligation, not ownership. If your frantic conscious mind tries to grab it all back, pause again, re-anchor in the present. Third thing, choose one sensory anchor to signal safety, to redirect your sensory system. Touch your chest and say, right now, I'm here. Run your fingers under warm water. Smell something grounding, peppermint, lavender, your child's shirt from today. This connects your mind, body, and brain in real time. It shifts the amygdala out of prediction mode and into observation. You want to be in observation. Fourth thing, speak a stabilizing truth. Say something aloud like this. I don't have to hold it all to be steady. This is not a mantra. It's a reframe. It's step 4 of the neurocycle called reconceptualization. By speaking it, you are embedding a new thought tree that ties identity to presence, not output. Fifth thing, take a 30-second active reach. Pick one micro action that reinforces the truth you just spoke. Leave a task undone and walk away on purpose. Ask someone for help, even if it's small. Sit down without a plan for 30 seconds and let your body notice the stillness. This final step rewires expectation. It gives your brain evidence that your conscious mind has done the work of redirecting the pattern. And when you repeat it over time, it changes how the mental load lands. You're not just pausing, you're actually leading. You, with your mind, are showing your brain that stability is not about holding more, it's about being more aligned with what matters most in that moment. In the next chapter, we'll meet someone who lived this shift, someone who learned to exit the overfunction loop and found a new way to stay present without burning out. I know someone who handled things. They really handled things. She had 2 kids, a full-time job, and a partner who meant well but didn't track what needed to be done until it was urgent. From the outside, she looked composed, meals got made, deadlines were met. There were never any forgotten field trips or missed birthdays. Nighttime stories and chats were on point. But inside, her system was unraveling. She wasn't melting down. She wasn't snapping. She was fading. It wasn't that she couldn't do it anymore. It's that she didn't know who she was outside of doing it. She reached out not because of a crisis, but because she didn't recognize her own mind anymore. She couldn't enjoy time alone. She couldn't feel rest as restoration. Her body would relax, but her frantic conscious mind kept her brain scanning frantically. When she began the neurocycle, I had her write down her first 5 thoughts upon waking. They were all other-focused. Did I sign that form? What time is her lesson? What's for dinner? I need to confirm the sitter. I forgot to move the laundry. Her own present wasn't even on the list. This is what happens when the conscious mind is trained to serve others before self-awareness. She was drawing on the thought trees in the non-conscious that were built around external needs, instead of the ones built around internal needs. Her identity became fused to being reliable. And because the brain adapts to serve what the mind prioritizes, her neural activity defaulted to planning, predicting, and protecting from the moment her eyes opened. Her conscious mind couldn't believe she was safe unless someone else needed something. I'm sure you can relate. Over the first 2 weeks of her neurocycle, we didn't start by asking her to delegate. We started by building awareness. She practiced saying out loud, I'm not just a function, I'm a person. That phrase wasn't for affirmation. It was to train her mind to interrupt toxic, automatized thought loops. She journaled about moments she felt unseen, but not angry, just absent, like she'd exited her own life to keep the engine running. As she moved into reconceptualization, she reframed what leadership looked like. Leadership isn't doing it all, it's knowing when to choose differently. Her active reaches were small, leaving a sink full of dishes on purpose, sitting with her coffee for 5 minutes and not checking the calendar, telling her partner she needed one task off her list each week, and letting it go, even if it wasn't perfect. These weren't tests, they were trust-building exercises between her mind and her brain, and each action taught her neural pathways and new association, that her worth didn't have to be tied to constant output. And by day 45, something shifted. Her child spilled a drink right before leaving for school. The old reflex kicked in, but she paused. She looked at the mess, and then she looked at her daughter, and instead of reacting, she laughed. That laugh was proof, not that the load had disappeared, but that her tidy part of her conscious mind had taken back the lead. She didn't burn out, she just re-entered. Not with a dramatic life change, but with micro moments that rebuilt her identity in real time. In the next chapter, we'll distill this into one final truth, a moment of clarity you can hold onto when the invisible weight returns. The conscious mind is not a machine, it's an experiencer. And when it's trained for overfunctioning, the brain follows, wiring itself around patterns of performance instead of presence. That's why rest doesn't always feel restful. That's why silence doesn't always feel spacious. That's why doing less can feel like emotional freefall. Here's the mic drop. You don't have to carry the whole system to prove you're steady inside it. That belief, when repeated over time, rewires the brain's relationship to pressure. It reminds your internal world the weight of parenting, planning, and protecting is not your identity, it's a role you've been rehearsing. And the moment your conscious mind names that distinction, it will update your brain on how it processes responsibility. This is not about giving up care, it's about reassigning what your care costs. And let me just say it plainly. You are not the emotional infrastructure for everyone else's life. You are the narrator of your own. When the mind starts leading from the truth, the brain becomes a better partner, not a driver fueled by fear. And that's such a turning point. Peace isn't passive. It's something your mind teaches your brain to recognize. You've been rehearsing survival long enough. Now your mind gets to rehearse something new. Presence that doesn't require exhaustion. Leadership that doesn't drain you to the core. Love that doesn't collapse your boundaries. Your brain is ready to follow. It just needed your mind to say it first. You didn't become the strong one on purpose. It happened slowly, one task at a time. One reaction softened, one moment of silence where you wanted to ask for help but didn't. And now the rhythm of your life is laced with responsibility that no one else tracks because you've trained yourself not to drop it. This is the invisible part of mental load. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it hums. It follows you from room to room. It keeps your posture tight even in rest. It makes you forget what it felt like to wake up without planning everything in advance. But that feeling of being on all the time, it's not personal. It's not a personal flaw. It's a response pattern built by repetition and reinforced by necessity. Your brain adapted to it, and now your mind gets to interrupt it. You're not failing to cope. You're living in a system that taught you to carry more than your body can actually hold. Let's be clear. This is not about villainizing roles or blaming people who didn't see it. It's about updating the narrative. Because the moment your mind decides that presence matters more than perfection, your brain will just follow that lead. That's what every step of this episode has been about, giving you language. Not just for what you do, but for what it costs. The cost of being the calendar, the regulator, the planner, the softener. But it's not too late to change the terms. You can be consistent and cared for. You can be present without being emptied. You can love the people in your life deeply without losing your reflection in the mirror. This work doesn't require permission, it requires intention. And that's what the Neurocycle gives you, a structure to walk through that intention each day, to observe the loops instead of reacting from them, to name what your body feels so your mind can translate it, to create small daily shifts that restore internal credibility. You get to reframe what leadership looks like inside of your home. Not as the one who absorbs everything, but as the one who teaches others what regulation actually means. A regulated home starts with a self-regulated mind, and a self-regulated mind starts with the moment you choose to stop ignoring your own mind. This is what presence sounds like. It doesn't ask you to hold everything. It invites you to see clearly and carry only what was meant for you. So if you've been walking through life quietly overburdened, if you've stopped expecting anyone to notice, if your smile still holds but your thoughts are scattered, I want you to know that the clarity that you're craving is not out of reach. It begins the moment your mind decides to lead. And I built Help in a Hurry to help you walk through that shift, one grounded daily step at a time. Because this isn't about dropping everything, it's about finally being able to breathe while you carry what matters most. If this episode helped you name something that's been weighing on you silently, if it gave your mind a moment of pause, a moment to be heard, then Help in a Hurry was written for you. Not to teach you more, but to give your mind a structured daily way to lead again. Because when your mind leads, your brain learns to expect steadiness instead of strain, and that's when the loops begin to unwind. Inside this book, you'll find step-by-step guidance to rewire how you carry responsibility, tools that match real-life chaos, not ideal conditions. Micro practices that bring the Neurocycle into your home, your parenting, and your pace. It's the companion I wish I had when the invisible weight became my normal. All designed to meet you inside the real-life moments where your brain wants to spiral and your mind just wants to step in. You don't have to white-knuckle through another season. You don't have to pretend it's fine just because it's functioning. You deserve tools that meet the version of you that's been carrying it all, without applause, without rest, and without resentment. Let Help in a Hurry be your next right step. Let your mind take the lead and let your brain finally exhale.